Here are some tips that will improve your Romanian deadlift, especially if you're new to this. First of all, despite the name, this actually isn't a deadlift. This all comes from the hips. It's a hip hinge movement and you actually don't perform a deadlift at all or anywhere near. The Romanian deadlift is a great posterior chain movement with emphasis on the lower back, the glutes and the hamstrings. This can really benefit a lot of your compound exercises and it's just a great all-rounder movement. So the first tip is oranges in your armpits. Now you're probably thinking, what do you mean? So if you can see in the video, at the start when I've just unwrapped the bar, I'm retracting my shoulder blades. It almost looks like I'm moving my shoulder blades back. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm engaging my lats and keeping my upper back nice and tight. This is going to prevent any rounding over in your upper back when you're performing the movement, when you're extending from the hips. And this is going to prevent any back injury. So what I mean is when I say oranges in your armpits, I want you to think you've got an orange in your armpit and I've instructed you to keep it there and you can't move it. So you've got oranges in your armpits and you've got to keep them there and you've got to keep them nice and secure and they can't move. So essentially what you're doing is you've got the bar and you're retracting back and you're keeping your lats and your shoulders nice and tight. And that's how you're going to keep it the whole way through the movement. And that's going to ensure your upper body's up, there's not going to be any rounding in your back, and this will keep you injury free as well. So the next tip is touch the button at the back of the room with your bum. And what this is going to get you to do is to really focus on hinging from your hips and pushing your bum back and not working from your knees. This isn't a squat movement, this isn't a deadlift movement. Your knees should remain as neutral as possible without locking them, and the work should be coming from your hips. As I said, it's a hip hinge movement, so the most stress should be on your glutes and your hamstrings and your lower back. So you're hinging from the hips and I want you to think about touching the button at the back of the room with your bum. Push your bum as far back as possible. The next tip is don't overextend. When you're lowering the bar to the ground, especially if you get back pain, try not going as far down. The likelihood is if you're going too low down, you're overextending, especially for your range of motion, and this is going to put a lot of stress on your lower back, especially if you've got heavier weights. You don't need to go down all the way to the bottom. As I said, it's not a deadlift, it's not a straight leg deadlift. This is something completely different. You're hinging at the hips, and if you haven't got the mobility there, you're just going to put a lot of stress on your lower back. So try shortening your range of motion and you should feel this a lot better. Keep your back straight is my next tip. I don't want to see no prawn back over here. I don't want you to see you cheating yourself out of reps and perfect form. Your perfect form with a lighter weight is going to benefit you more than a heavier weight and a shittier form. Trust me. So to keep yourself injury free, perfect your form, keep your back nice and straight. Don't hunch. This is going to put a lot of stress on your spine, which it doesn't need. Keep your form light until you perfected your form, and then you can progressively overload with your weight after you've perfected your form. Another tip is perfect your feet width. If you struggle with back pain, again, your foot width might have actually something to do with this. Primarily we say your feet should be around hip width, shoulder width, but this is all going to depend on the person and you might need to play around with this a little bit. Obviously if your feet are too far out, this is going to affect your range of motion. If your feet are too far in, you might struggle with your balance. So this is about finding the perfect spot for yourself, but the general consensus is it should be around hip width, shoulder width. But again, this is going to depend on the person, but this will affect your range of motion. This can obviously put a lot more stress on your back again, which is what we don't want. So if you're struggling, maybe consider changing up your foot width. Keep the bar as close to you as possible. Again, we're putting stress on the lower back. The further the bar is out, the more stress you're going to be putting on your back. This is going to lead to more chance of injury, which is what we don't want. By keeping the bar close, keeping your lats nice and set back and your shoulders up, shoulders back and your chest up, keep that bar nice and close. This is going to be a good starting point, and remember, how you start is going to determine how you finish. And in addition to hip hinging, I want you to think about sliding the bar down your quads and legs. This should help you ensure you've got a nice straight bar path that's consistent, smooth, and working alongside your other cues. I hope that helps.